On today's episode, we discuss a versatile material that serves a ton of purposes in the fishing world, all while costing you about 2 cents. We also recap the final Bassmaster Elite Series event of the season. We ask you what your favorite season to fish is, and we chat about if and when to use BFS. All that and more in this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. American Legacy Fishing is my favorite place to shop on the internet, whether I'm looking for brand new rods, brand new reels, line, baits, or used gear. If I have something that I've had in the back of my mind that I would really like to buy, I just don't want to spring the money for, I check their used page often because they're always updating it, and I found some killer deals over there on the American Legacy Fishing used page. They have the best selection of lightly used fishing rods and reels in the country on the internet, ready to be shipped right to your door. They also have an amazing loyalty program, the American Legacy Elite program. I've told you guys about that before. It is a no-brainer. It is the easiest $49 that I spend a year because I make that money back on pretty much my first order whenever I order back from them, because you get 10% back on every single order and free shipping with no minimums. That and a list of other benefits like a private Facebook group, exclusive sales and deals they send right to your inbox they don't send to anybody else. It's seriously a no-brainer for $49 a year that, like I said, the 10% back alone pays for it in like the first order or two. But they carry your favorite brands of rods and reels and everything. I mean, we're talking Shimano, Daiwa, St. Croix, Lew's, 13, G. Loomis, you name it, they've got it over there at American Legacy Fishing, and you can buy it from a great mom and pop Midwest tackle shop that actually cares, and not the giant big box store that doesn't know you from Adam and does not care about you. You're a number on a spreadsheet to them. Go shop with the folks where your order actually makes a difference. American Legacy Fishing, they're my favorite folks. I've ordered from them well before they were sponsors of this show, and I know they've become a quick favorite of a lot of our Tackle Talk listeners as well. So again, Tackle Talk 5 is your code over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. All right, everybody. First up here today, we had the final Elite Series event of the season at the Mississippi River in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which means quite a few things. It means we obviously get our last winner of the year. We get to crown our Rookie of the Year. We get to crown our Angler of the Year. We get a clearer picture about who actually made the Bassmaster Classic next year. And unfortunately, it means the dust starts to settle and we start to see some folks who have been eliminated from the Bassmaster Elite Series season in 2026 who did not make the cut, and then will have to requalify through the Bassmaster Opens if they want to get back to the Elite Series. But let's start with the event itself. The Mississippi River was just a darn cool event. It sets up so awesome up there in Wisconsin. It's got everything you could want. Late August means versatile types of fishing. We saw frogs, we saw walking baits, we saw punching and Carolina rigs, everything in between. It was a treat to watch. But your top 10 for the final event of the Bassmaster Elite Series season: 10th place Cooper Gallant, 9th place Stetson Blaylock, 8th went to KJ Queen, 7th went to Tucker Smith, 6th place Kyoya Fujita, 5th place Jay Shakurit, 4th place Brian Schmidt, 3rd place Corey Johnston, 2nd went to Caleb Kufall, and 1st place Pat Schlopper.
Caleb Kufall started the day with 50 pounds, 12 ounces. He's looking for 15-10. 12 pounds, 13 ounces. And Schlopper seals the deal and doubles down in 2025, becoming a two-time Bassmaster Elite Series champion. Pat, you have battled through so much. You and your family, nobody deserves this more than you. You guys all battle it out. But man, just like that, you were a two-time Bassmaster Elite Series champion. And this one happened a lot closer to home.
This one's so sweet. I mean, it means a lot to me. And like I said, the people that I get to fish with down here, it's for them. You know, we work hard fishing the way we fish. And it panned out this week. I'm so happy I won this. I love the river. I hope we come back every year.
I agree. You ready to make this official?
Oh, yeah.
To make this official, I'd like to bring out Pete Shoemaker from Pro Guide Batteries to do the handoff. Shopper seals the deal and doubles down in 2025, becoming a two-time Bassmaster Elite Series champion. The Pro Guide Bassmaster Elite on the Mississippi River belongs to Pat Schlopper.
So Pat Schlopper doubles down this year, winning his second Elite Series event of 2025, his first coming at the Sabine River earlier this spring, and now he wins in his home state of Wisconsin, a really, really special moment to end the season. Because before this year, Pat had been struggling pretty openly, and I think there was a lot of self-doubt there, just not really at the top of his game. And then in 2025, he comes through like a freight train with not one, but two Elite Series titles, and making it even sweeter is that this final win was like an hour away from his hometown. This event was in La Crosse. He's from, I think, like an hour and 15 minutes away from there. So a true local that has a lot of history around these parts takes the win. And in second, Caleb Kufal, also from Wisconsin, albeit like 3 hours away, I think, from La Crosse. And then in fifth place, Jay Shakurit, also a Wisconsin phenom from about 2 hours away from takeoff. So 3 locals in your top 5 to end the season in Wisconsin. Very, very cool for those upper Midwest folks. They are diehard bass fishing fans. And it's really cool to see 3 of their own do it on their home water to finish out the season. Awesome event all around. Now, your other storylines here. First is the Rookie of the Year, and this one should be no surprise to anyone. It's a kid that we've had our eye on for the better part of a decade now, a young angler who has won at every level he's competed at. He's a 2-time high school champion, a 2-time college champion, and this year he won an Elite Series event back at Lake Fork. He's also part of the duo that won $1 million a few years back in the U.S. Open with his college partner Logan Parks, who is also on the Elite Series now, and we even had Tucker and Logan on the show after they won that event that I think's been like 4 years ago now. It was in 2021. And this is, of course, Tucker Smith. Tucker Smith is your Rookie of the Year. A huge congratulations to Tucker. Well-deserved, an incredible young angler, one of the most highly anticipated young anglers in the last probably 10 years or so, and he's off to an amazing start to his Elite Series career. A win, a Rookie of the Year, a great season all around for Tucker. Now, next up was your Angler of the Year, and this is a big one. This is for all the marbles, crowning the best overall angler of the entire year. And this is an award that really everybody wants. It's a testament to your just overall body of work for the year. And this year, heading into this event, it was a 2-man show of Trey McKinney versus Chris Johnston, as they both went into this event tied in Angler of the Year points. Now, if this sounds like deja vu, you're not hallucinating, you're not making this up. These are the same 2 guys that battled it out last year for Angler of the Year at the end of the year, and you'll remember that Chris Johnston came out on top last year. Would this be Trey McKinney's year? Could he get his revenge from last season? A year where, in all honesty, he should have won Angler of the Year if it wasn't for a few simple mistakes and stuff. And now they're neck and neck heading into the Mississippi River again in 2025. Who would it be? Well, this year, similar to last year, it was heartbreak for Trey McKinney and victory for Chris Johnston.
48 anglers have weighed in. We have 2 remaining. These 2 are our final 2 in our progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year race. I need you guys to get very, very loud, because the first one weighing in is a 6-time Bassmaster Classic qualifier. He's an Elite Series champion. He's the reigning, defending progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year from Peterborough, Ontario, Canada, Chris Johnston. Chris Johnston trying to join a very rare group and become a back-to-back Angler of the Year. He's got 5 fish here today. 29 pounds and 9 ounces after 2 days of competition and a season-long battle. Today, 5 fish, 13 pounds, 7 ounces, gives him 43 pounds, and he moves into 19th place in this tournament. And only one man can stand in his way of going back-to-back 43 pounds even, Chris. And man, if last year when you hoisted that title became the first Canadian ever to win Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year, if I'd have said, we're going to be in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and there's going to be one person standing in your way of going back-to-back and join a very rare group, the only anglers to ever go back-to-back, Kevin Van Dam, Roland Martin, and Guido Hibden. To think of your name in that list, what's going through your mind right now?
I'm mentally worn out. To be honest, I'm at a loss for words. Today was one of the most stressful days of fishing I've ever had. For anyone that watched, I caught my fifth keeper at probably 2 o'clock, and just things going through my mind. What do I got to do? What do I got to do to get a bite? And all year, the guys I room with and stuff, they're like, man, you got a horseshoe. And when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And our first tournament at St. John's, end of the day, I'm coming back. I got 5 minutes of fish. I throw up to a seawall. I catch an 8.5. And Lake St. Clair, I got 7 minutes left to fish. I catch a 5.2, the biggest one I've caught all week, to put me in a contention for Angler of the Year, tied with Trey. And today, I'm like, you know what? Let's see if I got any of that magic left. I'm coming back up the river. Had a spot I hadn't fished all week. First cast I throw out, and biggest one I've ever seen on the Mississippi River, and it was 5.5 pounds for me, and it come off. And I was like, oh my God, that was it. And I'm like, you know what? Let's head back. I caught a couple small ones out in front of here. The previous days, I had 2 minutes to fish. I threw a vibrating jig against the seawall over here, and I caught one that probably gave me a half a pound. So that's, I guess, just goes to show all year it's never give up. Fish until the last minute, because I think 3 or 4 of my tournaments, I caught a key fish in the last 10 minutes of fishing, and that one, it's going to give me a chance at my second Angler of the Year, that's for sure.
Well, we'll see how this works out here in a minute. No matter what way it works out, let's hear it for him, ladies and gentlemen. To put himself in this position, I ask you to stand aside for a second. Don't go anywhere. We'll bring through our final angler. He is the youngest angler ever to qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. The youngest angler ever to win Dakota Lithium Rookie of the Year. The youngest angler ever to win an Elite Series title from Illinois. Young fishing phenom, Trey McKinney. Went out in 50th place. Let's get side by side. Chris went into 19th, so your goal is to get higher than 19th place. They were a deadlock tie going into this. Had 27 pounds even as of this morning. 5 fish here today. 14 pounds, 9 ounces. He moves into 27th place. Chris Johnston becomes a 2-time Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year. Chris Johnston, back-to-back Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year. Man, you are joining a league of legends. Roland Martin, Kevin Van Dam, Guido Hibden, and Chris Johnston. What is going through your mind?
Oh, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. Just to be mentioned among those anglers, I never even thought it'd be possible for a kid from Canada to come down here and compete and make a living fishing. And to be standing on the stage and just to be mentioned with those guys, Kevin Van Dam, a guy I've always idled, and just to even come close to one of his records is unbelievable. And what a year it's been, and honestly, I can't do it without my family, my friends. They flew down here to surprise me. That's the type of people they are. They supported me since I'm 2 feet tall, and now they're here cheering me on just like they did my whole life, whether it was fishing, hockey, playing baseball, whatever. They gave me the opportunity to do this, and I'm super grateful for it. And I don't even know what to say, to be honest. There have been so many key moments this year that have played to me winning this title again, and I really did get lucky this year. Some of those fish I caught, I could never do it again. It's just when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And this river stressed me out to no end this week. I did not have a good practice, and I was a mess out there. I don't know if you can tell on live, but I don't know how the old guys, the OGs, the Kevin Van Dam, the Davey, they make it look easy when they're winning or going for a title. But I was a mess out there today just trying to catch 5 fish. So to get it and do it in this way, it's unbelievable because it was so close all year.
So close all year. You say you get lucky, but you get lucky a lot, my friend, to pull this off, a season-long battle, and for you and Trey to push each other the way you have. Man, I can't wait to watch for the next chapter of this because, he's just getting started.
Oh, he's an unbelievable fisherman, and he's going to push all of us to get better, and I know he'll have his moment on this stage. I guarantee it, and it's almost like he's got a handicap. I think he started the season with a 90th place finish. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had a chance. And the year before, I think he did something similar. So I'll take him when I can, and it's just an unbelievable year. It's really just been a steady year, and I've just been consistent, and it paid off.
It paid off in a big way. Ready to make this official? He's done it before. He's going to do it again. 2 years in a row, the season finishes the same. I'd like to welcome Chris Sherwinski from Progressive to hand off the trophy and make this official. For the second year in a row, Chris Johnson is your Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year. Back-to-back domination, and Chris Johnson rules the season.
So Chris Johnston goes back-to-back as the 2024 and 2025 Angler of the Year for the Bassmaster Elite Series. And we start off, obviously, with a huge hats off. Congratulations to Chris. That is a wild feat that's only been done a few times in bass fishing history. On the Bassmaster side, KVD, Guido Hibden, and Roland Martin, I think, are your only three that have gone back-to-back for Angler of the Year. And now Chris Johnston joins that list, which is pretty incredible. Now, here's where I'm going to drop a little bit of a hot take, I guess. First off, this is nothing against Chris Johnston. I would pose this same question if it were anybody, and there probably has been situations of this before. This is just something that really hit me this year that I think was interesting to really think about in my mind. A crazy thing this year is that Chris Johnston did not make a single top 10 in 2025. Not one. In the regular season, we're not talking Classic or any other events or Opens or whatever. We're talking Bassmaster Elite Series regular season, which is what the Angler of the Year points come from. Chris Johnston did not make a top 10. On the flip side, he also never finished lower than 33rd out of 100-plus anglers. So the consistency of placing from 11th through 33rd in every single event is nuts. But he didn't make a single championship Sunday all year long in the regular season. So my question to you is it time to update the Angler of the Year rules? I haven't really heard anybody talk about this too much, but I think it would be nice to have some sort of stipulation in there that says at minimum you have to make a championship Sunday or a top 10, whatever you want to call it, maybe even a top 5 if you want to get crazy. But in my mind, it's hard for me to think of you as the single best angler in Bassmaster this year when you didn't make a single championship round. So let's do like blind resume here just for fun. Humor me for a second. Let's start with Angler 1. I won't give you the names here, but Angler 1 had 1 win this year, 5 top 10s, and 6 top 20s. Angler 2 had 0 wins, 0 top 10s, and only 5 top 20s. Which of those anglers sounds like Angler of the Year to you? 1 win, 5 top 10s, and 6 top 20s, or 0 wins, 0 top 10s, and 5 top 20s, even 1 less top 20 than Angler 1. To me, it's obviously Angler 1. Well, Angler 1 is Trey McKinney. Angler 2 is Chris Johnston. So I don't know. I fully understand that it's about cumulative points and about not having one bad single event, but it seems like there should be some additional qualifiers in there somewhere that help the Angler of the Year pass the eye test. Because eye test to me this year was that Trey McKinney was the best angler in the field. So just kind of a fun thing to think about there. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, but it was just something my brain was kind of wrestling with this week as Chris Johnston was crowned Angler of the Year. Huge congratulations to Chris. But, you know, a couple years from now, when we look back at the 2025 season, I think we'll all probably remember Trey as having a better year than Chris, which is kind of weird to think about. But other than that, we'll have more information as we get into the off season here on who made the Elite Series cut for 2026, who's in the Bassmaster Classic for 2026, all that good stuff. Once we kind of get past this a couple weeks, the dust settles, and I get the chance to kind of compile all that stuff for you all. Okay, next up here today, everybody, we're going to get kind of thrifty. And one of my favorite things to do here on the show is to try and save money. You guys know me by now. Yes, we try and balance out some of the, budget talk with really mid to high end gear talk every now and then, but my heart is definitely in the budget-friendly realm of fishing. I love saving money. I love DIY. I love getting creative, and today's episode is very much in that vein as we talk about a very versatile material and a tool that will cost you on average about 2 cents per time that we're going to use it in this episode, and it has a wide variety of applications from bait modifications to rod protection to repairs, and that material is heat shrink tubing. Now, I know most of you know what heat shrink tubing is, but for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's basically a thin, cheap tube that's made out of some sort of probably poly material, polymeric, or whatever you call it, but you heat it and it shrinks and then it hardens, and it gives you a really durable, protective sleeve or outer layer to whatever you wrapped it around. And it's great for two reasons. One, it's dirt cheap, and two, it's readily available at almost any hardware store. Those are two of the main ingredients for me for a great DIY material. I want it cheap and I want it widely available. Check both of those for heat shrink tubing. And a lot of folks, myself included, use heat shrink tubing for like electrical projects. So, anytime you're splicing wires and things like that. But you may not realize that heat shrink tubing can come in handy in quite a few applications in bass fishing as well. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. Some common and some uncommon uses for this cheap and easy to find material in your day-to-day fishing lives. Let's get started here. The first use for heat shrink tubing is probably the most common that you'll see out there, and that's just a way to make your wacky rigs or your Nico rigs more durable. So think of this as like a poor man's wacky rig O-ring tool. We've all seen those before. It's like a plastic or rubber ring that you put around the middle of your Senko so that your hook goes behind something other than just that soft plastic of the worm. Because if you just put a hook into the middle of a soft plastic Senko, you're going to rip a ton of worms. And then when you do, well, they're not much help for you for a regular future wacky rig. Yes, you can take those rip pieces and, cut them down and use them for Ned rigs or something, but for wacky rig purposes, it's pretty much done at that point. So that's where an O-ring tool can come in handy. You slide that O-ring over the middle of that worm, and now it's way more durable. You're way less likely to rip that worm in half. Simple enough. The problem is that O-rings are fairly expensive for what little they are, and they limit your rigging options. To really get a wacky rig the way I like it, where the hook is perpendicular to the worm, not parallel to the worm, you really need two O-rings, and you need to crisscross them and make an X, and then you can slide your hook through the middle of that X, and it pokes out the way that I want to. That's a topic for another episode, but safe to say the O-ring has its flaws like everything else does. Well, this is where you can use heat shrink tubing to solve that problem. Very easy. Buy the correct size heat shrink tube to feed your Senko through easily, and then cut about, probably a half inch or an inch piece of it off. Put your worm through until that heat shrink tube is right at the middle of that worm and apply heat. That's all you have to do. You can use a lighter, you can use a match, use a heat gun, whatever you want. I just prefer a lighter because it's easier to carry. But then once that heat shrink tubing has shrunk to perfectly grip and stay tight on that Senko, now you have a more durable middle section to feed your hook through, and you can do it in any direction you like. For extreme durability, you can add a second piece of that on the outside and sort of double stack that tubing, but you will now have a way more durable Senko that requires no fancy O-ring applicator. It's very quick and easy and very, very cheap. Now, this obviously goes for Nico rigs too, or other rigging applications, but wacky rigs are the most common. So 2 cents worth of heat shrink tubing and you're good to go on your wacky rig. So that's application number 1. Now let's move on to application number 2, which is to create a more stable trailer hook for your spinner baits and your buzz baits. And there are multiple ways to secure a trailer hook on one of those type of baits. And a trailer hook is just an extra hook on the back of that main hook to give you a better chance of capitalizing on short strikes and smaller fish and stuff like that. Some trailer hooks are just a hook with a really wide eyelet, so you can slide it over that first hook, and then you add some piece of rubber or plastic or something behind it, and you poke that through, and that works as a stopper. While other hooks come with the rubber already around that eyelet, so you simply poke your hook through that eyelet, and now it's going to stay there and it's not going to go past that barb. Either way, the important part is to make sure that that trailer hook does not slide past that barb, because then you're going to lose your trailer hook, and in turn, you're going to lose your fish. Well, you can buy some fancy trailer hooks out there that do both of these options for you, or, you guessed it, you can use heat shrink tubing. And there's a couple ways you can do this too. The first method is you can replace the first method we just talked about, where you put that trailer hook on and then you slide a very thin piece of heat shrink tubing on that hook and you heat it up and repeat as needed until you build a stopper thick enough to stop that trailer hook eyelet from sliding past the barb. Or you can take that piece of heat shrink tubing, cut it really small, and then poke it through the side of it without even really heating it up yet, and use that as a stopper. And then you can heat that piece once it's on the hook to make it more durable. Or you can create your own trailer hook that has that rubber piece already on the eyelet by just using a very, very small diameter piece of heat shrink tubing, sliding it over the eyelet, cutting that piece off, and then heating it until it stretches tight around the eyelet. And then you can cut off any excess you have there, and that lets you have that piece where you can poke that original hook through the eyelet of your trailer hook that now has heat shrink tubing around it, and you're good to go. Either way you prefer, heat shrink tubing can work as a great little addition to a trailer hook. Okay, let's keep moving here. The next one is a little bit sneakier of an option, but it's where you can make your own flipping hook out of a regular wide gap or extra wide gap worm hook. So I'm sure you've all seen flipping hooks before. They usually have this well-placed plastic keeper on the shank of that hook, and that way when you're flipping heavy weeds or cover, or you're constantly punching through stuff, that soft plastic isn't sliding up and down that hook shank all the time. You want it to stay in place. Well, that keeper is a must-have on a lot of those flipping hooks. But if you don't want to pay for an actual flipping hook and you already have worm hooks in your box, well, grab the heat shrink tubing and let's make our own plastic keeper here. So this one's pretty simple. You're just going to take a piece of heat shrink tubing. You're going to make sure it's very thin. Again, we're probably talking like 1/16 or 1/8 size heat shrink tubing at this point, but you cut it at about a 1/2 inch or less piece. And on one end of that cut, it's going to be straight across like normal. On the other end of that cut, you want to make it kind of at an angle so that you create this sharp point at one end. And then you just slide that piece of tubing up the hook so the sharp end is sticking straight off of that first bend of the wide gap hook. Like follow the hook all the way up from the hook point up to that very first bend. That's where you want that sharp piece. Just Google like a picture of an EWG flipping hook and you'll see what I mean. Right there is where you're going to want that piece of heat shrink tubing. You just want a sharp piece to be able to stop that plastic from sliding down that hook once you've threaded it on the first time. And it's very easy to do, like I said, with a worm hook that you probably have already in your box and just making it into a flipping hook. And if you're having trouble visualizing what I'm talking about here, I know it's hard and it's tough when you can't really see anything and, podcasts are all audio. Go on YouTube and you can find all kinds of videos on how to do this. I just did it a second ago and I found one from a channel that's called Rich Z Fishes, and the video is literally called Add Shrink Tubing Bait Keeper in parentheses spur to any offset shank worm hook. And that video right there that I'm looking at right now pretty much shows what I'm talking about. YouTube is your friend. Just look some of these up. I guarantee there's a million videos on how to do the wacky rig tip that we talked about first. The trailer hook tip might be a little bit more off the wall, but I think you guys get the point there. But this one specifically, look it up on YouTube if you need to. Okay, next up here, this one's going to be a little bit more niche for me, but it might be helpful to some of you too, and that's if you want to use heat shrink tubing to add as a stopping ring on the R bend of your buzz baits or your spinner baits. And I mainly do this because you guys know I run a lot of snaps on my baits, and the problem with a snap on a spinner bait or a buzz bait is that snap can slide all the way down your bait. And then when you make a cast, that snap slides to the blade or something, and now your lure is all fouled up and it's doing the death spiral on the water, and the buzz bait or the spinner bait is useless. Usually, the tension of that line pulls that snap into that natural stopping point, which is that line tie bend, and there's no issues. But sometimes that snap slips around a little too much, and then, like I said, you have problems on that cast. And I've talked about this before on the show. A lot of times, I will use one of the cheapest things in the world, a bread tie, to make sure that I can tie off that piece so that my snap can't slide around. But you can also do the same thing with a small piece of heat shrink tubing. Cut a very, very thin piece, slide it over that little bend, and heat it up. And now it basically makes this tight collar around that bend so that when you snap your snap, or if you just tie a loose knot or something, it's not going to slip up and down the bait for any reason. A very simple, takes half a second to do, and makes that bait a little bit more effective. Okay, our next to last one here today with heat shrink tubing is that you can actually use heat shrink to repair a broken rod eyelet. So I've done this over the years a few times where I've had eyelets come unglued or unepoxied from the blank of that rod, and right there where that little foot is supposed to stay on the eyelet, and a lot of people will wrap it, or like I said, they'll use epoxy or super glue or something like that, and that eyelet usually sets with those tiny little metal feet touching the blank of that rod. Well, if the epoxy fails and the feet aren't broken or anything, you can actually use something like heat shrink wrap. So not quite the tubing, because the tubing, you have to be able to slide all the way down the rod, and with other eyelets that makes it tough unless you're just doing like the tip or something, but I wouldn't recommend doing this for the tip. I would use this for other eyelets down that rod. But if you can find heat shrink wrap, not the tubing, but an actual, almost like a little thin tape that you can wrap around there, you can wrap those broken feet back onto the blank of that rod and then heat up that heat shrink wrap, and it will become a more durable bond there, and it's like more of a permanent fix. So I've done that before. If you just have an eyelet that pops off, or one of the legs or something comes off of the blank, you don't have to have that rod replaced or pay someone crazy money to repair it. You can just do it yourself with some cheap heat shrink wrap. That's what I did. And then our last one here for heat shrink is you can use it to make your own rod sleeves or rod socks. So all you have to do is get some cheap cable sleeve material. You can cut it to any length, and then you secure one end to make the tip with some heat shrink tubing. It's that simple. And again, this is one of those things you can look up on YouTube. There's a ton of DIY videos on how to do this, but rod socks are one of those things that every time I go to buy them or look at them, I am blown away with how expensive they are. And then I remember, oh man, I can make this for like, I don't know, $1 or pennies or something at that point, compared to paying $8, $9, $10, $12 for a rod sock. When you need 10, 15 rod socks, that adds up pretty quick. Just make your own with some cable sleeve and some heat shrink tubing. So there you go. There's quite a few uses for heat shrink tubing, which last I checked at my local Harbor Freight, I think was like $2.49 for an 8-foot section of it, which makes it about 2 cents an inch, which is all we need for most of these hacks and mods. So 2 pennies can get you a piece of material that has, I don't know, what did we just cover? 5 to 10 uses. And I'm sure there are many, many more that we didn't mention. So I hope that helps some of you out there save some money, get creative, and have some fun modifying or fixing things with heat shrink tubing. Okay, next up here, we have this week's installment of the Fishing Poll. And this is a weekly segment that we are going to bring to you where I ask you, the listeners, a poll question, and you guys get to answer it, and then we break it down here on the show. So this week's Fishing Poll was quite simply, what is your favorite season to fish? Now, first off, I'm going to give you my answer, and then we'll get to your answers. For me, without a doubt, zero question, my favorite season to fish is fall, and specifically late fall. And I won't give too much away because I know there's a couple local guys here that listen to the show, and I respect, our fisheries and the people that have fished them. But fall is a very, very special time around here, especially in river and creek settings. But aside from my local reasons, I do realize that fall is different depending on where you're geographically located. So I know a lot of people down south that hate fall fishing, and I know a lot of people up north that love fall fishing. Fall fishing in Florida is very different than fall fishing in Ohio. And in Ohio, those fish know and they realize, hey, winter is coming, and there is a period where they do feed up in anticipation of that. Now, the whole, fall feed bag type deal can get very overblown. It's not like those fish go bananas for 3 months straight, but they will go bananas for like a week or a week and a half. Now, they'll fish pretty well for much longer than that, but it's not like a 90-day, lights out, knock 'em dead party. There are very small windows within that fall season that can be pretty magical. But I also think I like fall because it's just my favorite weather to fish in. It's getting cold, the humidity is down, it's comfortable clothes without really having to layer too much on. You can still get in the water if you need to. It's not blazing hot. There's no snow on the ground. It's not flooded like spring is here. There's not cottonwood all over the water. It doesn't rain as much. It's just a very pleasant time to be out in nature and fish, period. So I'm sure that has a little bit to do with it too. Also, topwater is in play for the majority of fall all day long. So that's a plus in my book. And it also sets up for a lot of my other favorite power fishing baits all day long. You're talking spinner baits, chatter baits, A-rigs, crankbaits, glide baits, really fast worked jerk baits. It's not like winter or summer around here where you might have to slow down and really finesse them. It is true power fishing season. But for me, I can obviously see why every season could be your choice for this. Winter, I think fish are probably the most predictable that they are all year long around here. I would say spring, the fish are probably at their largest size, so I'm sure that's a drawing point. Summer, those fish are also very predictable, plus topwater and frogs and all that kind of stuff. Enough said. There are no wrong answers here, but mine is going to be fall. Now, let's see what you guys said. I'm going to pull up the survey here. I have not looked at this yet. Pulling up the tab right now, and interesting. Okay, so this is very close between your two favorites that you guys have chose here. There's two clear favorites that are kind of neck and neck, and then the other two kind of took a back seat. But your winner for all the Tackle Talk listeners out there was spring. With 41% of the vote, you guys chose spring as your favorite season to fish in. And that doesn't really surprise me. It's your best chance to break your PB probably. The weather is getting better. You're coming out of that winter funk. The days are getting longer. You can fish up shallow. You can bed fish. There's a plethora of reasons why I can obviously see you choose spring. I completely understand that choice. And then coming in second was my choice of fall at 37% of the vote. Third went to summer at 16%, and fourth went to winter at 6%. Now, the winter one is interesting to me because even though it's only 6%, I can also see who votes for these, and there are some absolute hammers, some big names that you guys would recognize that voted for winter, a few of which kind of surprised me, so that's kind of cool to see. But 6% for winter, 16% for summer, 37% for fall, and 41% for spring. Okay, and finally here, let's wrap up with a question from the mailbag to send us off today. This question is going to come to us from Caleb, who says, "Hey Andrew, Caleb here. I'm an 11-year-old kid and I live in Kentucky. And I gotta say, I love the podcast. It's the only thing I listen to now. I do have a question for you. I've recently been getting into BFS. I just love finesse fishing in my pond and at this lake where I camp at. You are always talking about how you like using finesse spinning rods to throw small lures, but I think that BFS is really fun. Why don't you like using BFS? Thanks for your time. Once again, love the podcast. Keep up the great work." Caleb, thanks for writing in. I think we talked about this like a week or two ago as well, but sort of in a different vein. It was more like, when would you use one versus the other? Not what do I not like about it. So I think this is a little different of a question, but it's interesting. So first off, you're 11 years old, Caleb. I wish I was anywhere near where you are now at 11 years old. You are light years ahead of where I was. So fish better watch out. Like, I was not even touching a bait caster or anything like that yet. So you are way, way, way ahead of me. Now, the question itself, I do tend to rag on BFS a lot. I know we've talked about that before. It's just not my thing, but I still try to talk about it sometimes because I know there are people that listen to the show that do love it, but it is my personal opinion that BFS is more about novelty than it is about utility. And I know that's a strong and probably unpopular opinion to some, but that's how I feel. When you look out at 200 plus of the best bass anglers in the country that are out there competing on the biggest circuits, the MLF Bass Pro Tour, the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, the Bassmaster Elite Series, the Bassmaster Opens, they're out there on big smallmouth fisheries where you would typically throw like finesse gear like you're talking about, and they're not throwing it on BFS, like almost ever. It's almost always spinning gear. When hundreds of thousands of dollars are on the line, hardly anybody is out there throwing BFS gear. I'm not saying there's nobody, because there are probably some people you can find, but most people are still using a spinning rod. And that's not because BFS isn't fun. It's definitely fun. It can be awesome. And that doesn't mean that BFS can't be a very effective way to catch fish, because again, it can. But to me, I see BFS gear as a pretty expensive and unnecessary combo in my lineup, because I already have spinning gear that can do the exact same thing or better. People that really like BFS, I think, like it more so because it's just a cool feeling catching fish on that light of a rod and throwing that light of a bait on casting gear, because they never could do it before these reels and before this technology kind of came out. And it feels odd. It almost feels wrong, and it's fun in that way because it's so different. And that's totally fine. But you guys know me by now. If you've listened to this show at all, you know that I am a pretty kind of analytical, practical person. Like, I am a type A personality to to the bone, no question about it. I feel like BFS gear is more for type B personalities, more relaxed, easygoing, adaptable, have fun type folks. Nothing wrong with it. I've thrown BFS before and caught fish, and it's fun, no doubt, especially in the right situation. But again, I think it's a novelty to me more than anything. So I hope that answers your question, Caleb. Don't let grouchy old me, an old man over here with my cane, stop you from having a blast with BFS gear. If you enjoy it, go out there and do it, because I get the appeal. It's just not for me. Okay, everybody, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. As always, go find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.